What's the worst physical pain you've ever felt? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. 2 ovarian cysts bursting at the same time. I had to crawl to get to my phone to call for a ride to the ER. Yep, ovarian cyst rupture is still my number one, and I just had my first child. It was in my early 20s. I remember I was on the 11th floor of an apartment building downtown and refused to let anyone move me enough to get me to the just stuck in the fetal position crying my eyes out. Why don't they teach girls about these? I was so scared and had no idea what was going on until my roommate shared her ovarian cyst rupture story the next day. Poor thing. Went to an ER where the male doctor told her it couldn't be that bad and accused her of drug seeking, and I made a same-day appointment to a women's clinic. I couldn't stand up straight for a week, and that was with the Vicodin they gave me. Story 2. I woke up one day, started getting ready for work, and suddenly some pain creeps up in my pelvis. It gradually but quickly got worse to where I couldn't even stand on my feet. I somehow managed to get to the bed, got in the fetal position, and called an ambulance. The operator asked me to rate the pain 1 to 10. I barely managed to whisper a 10. I thought it was an appendicitis attack, but after spending half a day in the ER because they couldn't figure out what it was, someone had the idea to send me to the gynecologist. Yep, ruptured a cyst. Story 3. I had surgery, then got a sinus infection, all in a 4-week period, so I had a few antibiotics prescribed in that time. Ciprofloxacin, then Ceftonir, then azithromycin. We're not sure which one triggered the reaction, and unfortunately there's no way to test without another potential reaction. I just have to avoid those families of antibiotics, as well as sulfonamides, which are known to cause it. The good news is SJS10 reactions are tied to several HLA genes, so there is a genetic component, meaning not everyone is susceptible. I had it 9 years ago, so there is a lot more known about it today than there was then. I think there's also a study being conducted at Vanderbilt University, which is promising, because as I found out the hard way, there is no expert physician or world-renowned clinic hospital for it. My doctors were literally learning on the job with my case, not what you want to happen. I've heard, wow, I remember reading about this in medical school at least 24 times, along with getting to show off my pics to every med student nearby. LOL. Story 4. Kidney stones. Felt like I was being stabbed from the inside. It's a pain you never ever forget, and you learn to dread the "I'm generally sore in this specific spot inside my torso" feeling. It's a knife, made of fire, that slowly and methodically traces a line across your abdomen from the inside. You can massage the area, you can drink a bunch of water, you can take aspirin and ibuprofen. Nothing helps in time. You just have to sit or curl into a ball on the floor and wait for the pain to pass. Nothing makes it go faster. Nothing alleviates the pain. It's just you and the fire knife in your abdomen, waiting for it to finish its course. Story 5. Sciatica. Herniated 5 discs at once. Didn't walk for 2 years. There are many versions of that's one of them. Herniated disc pain is on an entirely different level. Folks hear back pain and think it's soreness or a pinch, but it felt like someone was holding a butane torch to my lower back while at the same time shoving a steel rod down my leg. I've ended up at the ER multiple times shaking, vomiting, or just out of my mind in pain since I started getting herniations. Add that to the fact that even turning over in bed or trying to wipe your ass is like being shot, and it's a perfect storm of physical emotional horror. Story 6. While in labor, without pain medication, they had to do a manual rotation. It's where the doctor midwife puts their hand inside of you to rotate your baby. I could feel every bit of it, and it still gives me nightmares sometimes 5 years later. But my baby and I did okay, which is all I cared about. My 10-pound, 10-ounces son got stuck when his arm came out first and got wedged next to his head. Because of placenta placement, the only safe thing to do was push him back up inside me and push his arm back. All this rummaging around, pushing and shoving was done via my vagina. I can still hear my own screaming and my hip bones grating against each other. The pain was mind-bending. My brain took me to a weird, prehistoric animal place which I've never quite forgotten. Story 7. Nerve pain from herniated L5 disc. Fentanyl, morphine, Valium, Dilaudid, didn't touch it. Couldn't sleep more than 2 hours a night for more than 2 weeks. Was putting pressure on the S1 nerve root so my whole arm would cramp. Couldn't stand up straight. Couldn't sit or stand for more than 20 minutes. I've given birth by C-section with a failed epidural by the 4th centimeter. I've had an eardrum rupture, and that nerve pain is the worst thing I've experienced because painkillers don't do anything for it. The combination of pain and sleep deprivation makes you start longing for death. Dealing with that pain for long periods is the only time I've ever been. Story 8. Withdrawal. Because of my disability, I've been on pain medication for almost my entire life. I got a new doctor. He said having me on all that pain medication is bad and cut me off completely. The pain was so bad the doctor thought I was about to have a heart attack because my heart would raise up drastically. I always thought most drug addicts were being dramatic when it came to withdrawals. Absolutely not, and I applaud anyone who was able to become sober dealing with that pain. Story 9. I always had very bad periods. I started at the age of 9. I would pass blood clots the size of my fist. One night I woke up and instantly started screaming. I made it to the bathroom with a trail of blood running from my leg onto the floor all down our hallway. I sat on the toilet for what felt like forever and finally passed a clot that was so big my mother scooped it out and put it in a container and rushed me to the emergency room. At first they told me it was a miscarriage, but I had not become sexually active yet. I had to have a blood transfusion from the loss of blood and a 2-day hospital stay. At 14, I was covered in endometriosis and had to have a full hysterectomy at the age of 18. I bled for 10 months straight at one time. I can hands down say from the age of 9 till I had my hysterectomy, I was almost in constant pain. I remember telling my mom all the time I just wanted to die. Story 10. I did cross country in high school for 2 years. One night, I woke up to a sudden pain in my left leg. I grabbed it to feel what was wrong to find I had a golf ball-sized lump on the side of my calf. When I touched it, I felt the bundle of muscle twitch and pain shot throughout my leg. I started to cry quietly to myself. In that moment, I considered yelling for my mom to help me, and I was terrified, thinking I was going to lose a leg. The agonizing moment that felt like forever eventually subsided. Later on, I learned that this was a Charlie horse, a common thing amongst athletes. I had another one later on, but it was less intense. Story 11. When my body was on fire, but only after it got put out. During the fire was just pure fear. My cousin had something similar, arms and face from a work incident. He got sanded too, said it hurt far worse. Then the doctor told him he might need skin grafting and that people said that hurt even more. He was genuinely scared of the idea. In one aspect, he got insanely lucky. A fire truck was on the way to a low-priority highway accident call when the driver witnessed a massive fireball over the hill at the plant my cousin was working at. The fireman called in and said he was diverting to this incident as he assumed they would need immediate help and the fender bender could wait. As my cousin recalls it, as he got himself out of the fireball and began rolling around on the ground with 2 other guys, the fireman was already there and began spraying them with a small hose. That water significantly reduced all of their wounds. They all had semi-solid material on them that was flammable and hot, so getting it cool and off was critical. Had that fireman not been around, all of their recoveries would have been significantly longer and harder. Story 12. Cluster headache. Felt like knives slowly but surely were moving in my brain. I was just 12, and this was on April 1st, 2019, where it also happened to be Easter Sunday. I walked into my mother's room at like 4 in the morning. I ended up taking a pain med laying down in her bed, only for it to get worse. I was screaming uncontrollably, shaking in pain. I ended up having to take a much stronger one, and after like 2 hours, I finally started to get relief, and I passed out, completely unconscious. Somehow woke up just an hour later, luckily better. My mom was almost certain I was going to the ER since it was lasting for so long. Months of fighting for an MRI scan of my brain and C-spine. Turns out I have one of the worst cases of Chiari-1 malformation my doctor has ever seen in a child. Unfortunately, this has left me in severe chronic pain within the past few years, and even more so within recent months. Story 13. Had an ingrown nail removed from my big toe. Soon after the anesthetic wore off, someone accidentally stepped on it. I've had an ingrown toenail about 4 times now, and removed them all at home. The last time, about 2 years ago now, was the absolute worst. Turns out when you do it at home with bootleg tools and no anesthetic, it hurts like a and you take it slow. That is until I got through the flesh enough to lift it up and get the nail. I made sure it was cut off from the rest of the main nail down to the base, which hurt so badly. Grabbed some pliers, got a good hold on the nail, took a towel, bit down on it, and ripped that out. It hurt so badly. Worst part was having to go back into my toe and scrap out the last 3 pieces of nail I missed from cutting it out. After that, the nail was dead. IDK what it was, but it was extra thick, not a normal color, and slowly grew out. Took a while, but I could see the healthy nail growing underneath while the old, thicker nail grew out and off my toe. But hey, it's been 2 years and I haven't had an ingrown toenail since, and my toenail is normal looking now. So it worked out, I guess. Story 14. I tore my ACL and had to ride a bus 7 hours back to our home hospital with no ice and 1 Tylenol. After the surgery, I was allergic to the antibiotics and developed full-body hives right after the night shift and wasn't checked on the whole night, and on top of all of that, my call button didn't work. I laid there for 6 hours, having a full-body allergic reaction, unable to move, scream, or call for help. Edit. For some context, it happened when I was in high school. We were playing football in a different state, and my parents weren't at that game. Humble brag, but it was a legendary hit where I broke his leg and a rib, and he did that to me. We were both knocked unconscious. I had to ride the bus back because that was the quickest and cheapest way back. They were going that way anyway. Lol. It was penicillin that I found out I was allergic to, and after my ACL surgery, they put my knee in one of those auto flexor things, so it moved it for me. I was unable to get up, and the pain was so much I could scream. Felt like one of those nightmares where you scream and no voice comes out, except it actually happened. Didn't sue because my parents were poor and couldn't afford a lawyer. I was healing really well, then slipped on some ice going to basketball practice and ruptured the meniscus of my other knee. It wasn't a good year, and my knees now hurt at 35. Become mathletes, kids, not athletes. Story 15. Every bad rheumatoid arthritis flare-up, especially when it's in the jaw and hits the trigeminal nerve. It's so bad that even though I've had dozens upon dozens of them, I can't remember how bad the pain is until the next one comes around. My brain blocks out all the details, so much pain, you can't think of words, at least not any that string together to form any cohesive thought. Imagine you broke your wrist, and by broke, I mean obliterated it. Shattered every bone in your arm, wrist, and hand into tiny pieces. Those pieces then turn into molten shards of razor blades. Then for 10 to 24 hours, that arm is put in a vise that is constantly being compressed. There doesn't seem to be a point where it can't get worse. The pain doesn't throb, it doesn't come in waves, it is a never-ending crescendo of agony that goes from worse to worse. A flat line of pure you. It feels like it has a will personality, and it hates you more than you could conceive of hating anyone or thing. You're gonna panic. You're gonna bargain with the universe god. You're gonna think about ending it all. You're going to disassociate. You might vomit or piss yourself. It changes you. I can't remember the person I was 6 years ago. Everything I did and the reasons why are replaced with doing everything in my power to not end up in that place and to survive it when it inevitably happens. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.